Is marriage still the key to lifelong happiness, or has it lost its spark? In a world full of options, we're going to break down whether "till death do us part" still hold up. Let's talk about it. What's up, YouTube? Boswell back with another video from the Husband Code. So whether you're dating, whether you're single, you're married, we're going to look at some fresh perspectives on today's marriage. Now, looking at both sides, hopefully we can share some innovative tips on the world of relationships today. So fast forward to today, marriage is really no longer an obligation. Now, yes, around the world, there's other cultures and things that still marry their sons and daughters. But here in the U.S., many people are choosing to stay single, they're cohabitating, or they're looking for other forms of relationships, things like open marriages or even polygamy. So a couple key takeaways that I want to point out is if you look over the time where we currently at, especially in the US and globally, marriages has declined. Now there has been a rise in like different forms of marriage and different forms of partnerships when it comes to the relationship bonding. And lastly, there has been a shift in legal and social dynamics when it comes to open relationships and different forms of marriages. So understanding how marriage has evolved and looking at it historically to where it is now, why do people even choose to stay married? What's the benefit of it? Well, one of the benefits is people seeing marriage as a deep emotional connection. They're seeing it as a sense of security, a sense of belonging, and a way of like a socially recognized bond. Another benefit when it comes to marriage is commitment and stability. For many people in marriages, when it comes to building a foundation, they're looking at raising kids, they're looking at a life partner, they're looking at building a life together. It's not always about love, but definitely in the mix is growth and mutual support. Now next, I want to dive a little bit into traditional marriage. Right now we're in a modern world. There's modern men, there's modern women. And so the thinking and viewpoints when it comes to traditional marriage is kind of being left in the past. Nowadays the expectations of marriage and of relationships are very different. And so I think now people are looking at personal fulfillment, autonomy, and I think that they're redefining roles on what it means to be in a modern relationship versus a traditional one. Now, many people are saying that the traditional marriage is dying off, and you can see that impacted by the divorce rates. They're sky high, as I touched on earlier, especially here in the U.S. Many people don't want to commit to the till death do us part. They want to be in relationships and marriage that can evolve and adapt and not feel like they stuck in this traditional commitment of this lifetime of marriage of what it's supposed to be. People want to modernize, a traditional marriage, right? And so that brings me to even a personal story of mine and my relationship. I would say I'm actually in a modern marriage. When me and my wife first met, one of the things we both agreed on is, look, we do not want a traditional marriage. Now, yes, there's principles and things you can always rely on, which I'll touch on in a second, kind of like 3 real tips we kind of live by, or principles we live by. But however, that was one of the things for us. Like, we had been together for a while. We started talking and getting real serious, and we just really came together and say, look, this is the foundation of things we, accept and won't accept, negotiables, non-negotiables. And that was kind of our foundation, and we was willing to build around that to create the marriage we wanted. And so it didn't stem from traditionalism, but again, we did use some of the principles, which I'm going to touch on in a second. But however, even to today, we really have a modern marriage, and it works for us. So that's me saying, you got to figure out what work for y'all. But in this modern world, it's hard to stay fully traditional with how life is. We don't even work traditionally anymore. People got all type of side gigs, side hustles, people working 24 hours a day for certain, roles, remote, non-remote. It just, nothing about work is anymore traditional. And so how could you try to say, my marriage need to be traditional when life isn't even traditional anymore? So that, for me, that was kind of my mind state on how I approached it. Was like, I don't want to be boxed in. I want us to be fluid. I want us to evolve and adapt. And so that's helped us along our journey to be able to adapt to life as a whole and help our marriage stay stronger. Now, sharing 3 things that work for us, there's a multitude of things that we had that was negotiable and non-negotiable, but there's 3 things that's been consistent, which is open communication, flexibility, and continual growth. So when it comes to like open communication, one of the things for us is no matter what's going on, and again, we're not talking about petty stuff, right? We're talking about real life stuff. We got to be able to sit down, be respectful, and hear each other out. And as a man, because again, from the viewpoint from the husband code, ego, you got to kill ego when you want to have a productive conversation between you and your significant other. So open communication, both parties being on the same page and trying to hear each other out so we can get solutions done, not just hearing problems, and that we can work and continue to grow. The second thing is being having flexibility in our marriage. Again, we don't have a traditional marriage. We definitely in the modern world, we understand that. So things got to be to shift and move around with our lifestyle to make our marriage more valuable and impactful, that we can continue to grow. And like I said, continual growth is probably the biggest thing outside of communication, because every year, we've sat down and at least kind of reflected, like, hey, how was the year? What did we do good? What did we do bad? And even if you grow a little bit, that's better than kind of going down. So those 3 things, open communication, being flexible, and continual growth, is really the cornerstones, I think, for us that's helped us continue to grow and move forward. So listen, this is my final thoughts about it, right? So is marriage dead? Is to death do us part commitment old? Is marriage kind of yesterday's news? I don't personally think so. What I do think is that you have to figure out what worked for you. So I understand there's like cultural differences. I understand there's family influence. And I understand that, religion can play a part in that as well. I think you got to take a little bit from each space and create, what works for you in your marriage with your partner and significant other. And so with that being said, with that, it's still principles behind it that you can take from a traditional marriage. However, again, we're in modern times, so you have to figure out how to be flexible with, what you use from an old school kind of traditional way, and the modern world we live in is kind of a blend between the two. So again, for us, and what works for me is that open communication, the flexibility of our marriage, and definitely looking at continual growth. So what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Let's talk about it. Is there something I missed in it I could have added? Is there something that you guys would like to share from what works for your marriage? And how does this impact you guys from a traditional versus modern? Let's talk about it down in the comment. Also, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.